Okay. Wow, this is such fun. So, firstly, let me say, this is a bit ad hoc. Bill was in town, so I thought we'd grab him while we could. You'll notice Levy's not here, so our tech man is not here. I don't know if the sound's going to be good. I think the video looks quite good, so I can say that at least, but I've got no idea about much else. I hope this works, but one way or another, even if it doesn't,
we'll have a nice time.
We'll have a nice time together, me and Bill. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly. So just a little introduction. Firstly, it's a privilege, an honor, a pleasure to have Dr. Bill Pettit with us today to talk about sort of mental health, mental illness, well-being, etc. And just to give a little introduction, there is a pandemic in my mind of mental illness in the world today. This country seems even worse in America. It seems to be a problem everywhere. And one thing that always shocks me is people refer to it as mental health. That if you ask people, give me some examples of what we mean by mental health, people will say, oh, schizophrenia, bipolar, eating disorders. That's mental health. If that's mental health, what's mental illness?
Right.
It's like there's no room for anything else. It's like everything is mental illness. Even mental health is mental illness nowadays. And what a shame we have such a bleak and pessimistic outlook about people's lack of well-being. That even the mental health we call, even the illness we call mental health, or even we refer to it as it's to me it's all upside down.
We have mental health clinics, don't we?
That's right.
Yeah.
And what's that? That's for people with mental illness. Yeah. It's normally you have a broken leg, a broken bone clinic. What's that? That's for people with broken bones. Right. We have a mental health clinic. What's that? That's for people with mental illness. Well,
hopefully, maybe someday it will be a place where people activate, reach their own mental health.
Well, exactly, and that's what we're going to talk about, Bill. I think that's the bottom line where we're going today, hopefully. But I want to introduce you first, if I may.
Sure.
Bill, I'm just going to give you a little bit some of his credentials. There's a very long list. This is 1/3 of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So Bill went to the University of Illinois College of Medicine and completed his psychiatric residency at the Philadelphia Naval Regional Medical Center and Portsmouth Naval Region Medical Center in Portsmouth, Virginia, not Portsmouth down south over here in this country. Right. He's board certified in psychiatry and has been previously certified in adolescent psychiatry and geriatric psychiatry. I find that quite funny, actually, two opposite ends of the spectrum. And psychosomatic medicine and addiction medicine. Bill served as physician in the United States Navy for over 9 years, including 3 years as a Navy flight surgeon and 3 years as chief of psychiatry of the Navy nuclear submarine base at Groton, Connecticut. And I would imagine that people on submarines struggle with their well-being, and maybe I'm wrong about that.
Some do. Back then, it was an all-voluntary force, so they chose the submarines. Probably people like solitude.
Okay,
but,
so
it's interesting.
More well-being.
That submarine base was at Groton, but they called it Groton, New London, which is a little grandiose because New London is a pretty small town. Pretty kind of grandiose to be named New London.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, New York.
I was going to say, well, that's like New York. That's a bit grandiose to call it New York. Compared to York, I mean, you just can't compare the two. You never seen Times Square in York, up north over here? I tell you, Times Square in New York's got nothing on the Times Square over here. So that's a little bit, that's just a tiny little bit of Bill's credentials. However, we had a conference this week, and in my mind, Bill's credentials are that he's Bill Pettit, Bill Pettit, the human being, and just who he is as a person. All the rest is just words. To me, the quality of who he is, and I hope you'll get a sense of that today, is what's really important. However, we're going to have a third opinion over here, because I believe, I don't believe Bill's going to disagree with me on that. He believes his credentials to be that he met Sydney Banks in 1983 and spent 25 years studying with him. I think Bill would say that's his real credentials. And more on that later. We will come on to Sydney Banks, and we will come on to the 3 principles, etc. I did just want to say a couple more things in introduction. Bill is a psychiatrist, and I don't know if anybody knows it. I didn't know until a few years ago what the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist was. If we look at the etymology of the words, a psychologist means somebody who sort of studies, and psyche was the Greek god of the soul. So somebody who studies souls, somebody who understands the wisdom of souls. I don't know if that's true nowadays, but that's certainly the original meaning of the word.
What's the original meaning? Yeah.
And psychiatrist is somebody who heals, a healer of souls.
One who heals the soul.
Yeah. And that's, and Bill certainly is that. If no one else is in the world is that, Bill is that. And I'm hoping, again, you're going to get a flavor of that today. He is the truest poster boy for what a psychiatrist really is and should be, and what the word really means in its truest sense. In my mind, there are 3 unique things about Bill, and I'm going to say these 3 things, and then Bill will get on to you over here. But there's 3 unique things about Bill as a psychiatrist. Number 1 is that Bill genuinely loves people. He genuinely loves the people that he works with. His patients come in, and anybody. I sit with him now, and I feel a sense of love. I mean, you can't help it. It's just there. It's just who he is. And I think that's unique. I'm not convinced that, there are probably other individuals as well, but I'm not convinced that generally psychologists, psychiatrists have a deep feeling of connection and love for the people that they work with. That's very special about Bill. And by the way, I think all these 3 things kind of go together. I think they all kind of overlap each other. The second thing about Bill is that he believes in people. He sees their wellness. He sees their well-being. He sees their godliness. He sees their essence. And so somebody can come in, again, we're going to talk about this, who is, at least on paper, in sort of diagnosis terms, incredibly unhealthy, incredibly unwell. And Bill looks at them and sees as healthy a human being as he's ever seen in his life. For Bill, all human beings are equally healthy within. They just get lost in the craziness of their own thinking, but that doesn't change who they are.
Yes, yeah.
And Bill sees that, and Bill lives with that, and Bill feels that, and Bill knows the truth of that. Yeah. And then the third thing that's very unique about Bill, in my mind, is he's a miracle worker. He really is, and I'm hoping you're going to hear some stories today. But it's almost like, I mean, I don't want to compare him really, but maybe I will, to the prophets of the Old Testament or to Jesus. Bill seems to walk around and sort of just touches people. He doesn't even need to touch them, and they get better. And you wonder what he did. But in my mind, I think, like I said, all those 3 things go together. Is the love Bill has for people, and the belief he has in them, I think heals them in and of itself. I think that's what heals them. And again, I'll let Bill kind of say more about that. But I really want to kind of get into it here. I've got a few questions for you, Bill.
But can I say,
yeah, absolutely.
The 4th thing that you didn't mention,
okay, go ahead,
is that I'm mischievous.
Oh yes, of course.
So I you talked about. I'm impressed, by the way, that you know the Greek root of
okay, thank you.
So as you know, that's not what most psychiatrists do. So I used to teach at the university residency program in psychiatry, and I was co-director of the psychopharmacology course, the medication course. So one of the first lessons I did with the first-year residents showed my mischievousness, because I put up psyche and iatria and IST, and I said, do you people know the Greek roots of these words? And they said no. And I said, well, I did tell I guess the first one I told the truth, then I said two fibs. I said ist is one who.
Yeah.
And iatria is the Greek root for chooses.
Yeah.
And psyche is the Greek root for the right medicine.
Yeah.
I said so great. A psychiatrist is one who chooses the right medicine.
And they all probably said, oh yeah, of course.
And they said, really? And I said, no. So anyway, I thought you'd enjoy that.
Yeah, but unfortunately, Bill, that's kind of what it is today. I mean, really, that's kind of what it's become.
But it's innocent, Shaul, because if we don't understand that every human being is divine energy in a form, and you can't lose that, you can kind of cover it over with your innocent misuse of this incredible gift we've been given to navigate our way through life called thought, then and you don't know that all you have to do is to point people in that direction, then you keep trying to give them medicines to clean up the dysregulation they're innocently creating in their body. So your only solution you see is to try to do something to either clean up the medicine, and now maybe this is where you were headed, but so I don't have to talk about it in detail, but now the thing is, how do we decenter people from their thinking? That's so we people are being given dissociative medicines, psychedelics, ketamine, ecstasy, MDA.
Yeah.
Because why? Because if you don't understand your own ability to access this by just being in the present moment as best you can, you have to give something, but something that decenters them, takes them out of their thinking into their life.
We actually did a podcast on that, Bill, with somebody who uses ketamine as uses psychedelics, and you're right, it's a growing field. It's very much a growing field of sort of taking people somewhere else other than where they are to try and find themselves.
Right.
Which is a fascinating concept.
Right. Well, yeah, I'd love to tell you how that got involved as far as the research, if you want me to.
Yeah, go on. I'm happy to take a couple of minutes on that.
It is fascinating because, as we know, cognitive behavior therapy is focused on trying to change people's thoughts, trying to lessen their negative thinking. And they have assignments and a lot of hard work to learn to not catastrophize as much, and to not personalize things as much, and to not overgeneralize their thinking. And so it's a lot of hard work, right? So they took, and this is in a book, and I can even give you the reference later, they got 100 people who had gotten out of their depression, because some people do, because universal mind is always there, trying to come through the crack. So or God, I use them interchangeably, and that's for me. So God's trying to come through. So these are 100 people that came out of their depression while getting cognitive behavior therapy. Okay, and they had no relapse in 2 years. These 100 people. They took another 100 people, and it wasn't that half ended up. They just took another 100 people who had gotten out of their depression while they were undergoing cognitive behavior therapy, but they all relapsed in 2 years. Now, by the theory of cognitive behavior therapy, that depression is from too much negative thinking. Yeah, you would think that these people that relapsed, if you measured how much negative thinking that they're doing, would be doing more, have more negative thoughts than the people that didn't relapse. Logic, right? Yeah. So they did all of the scales that they use in that kind of research, and to their utter shock would be too much of a word, maybe, but amazing. Surprise, no difference. Wow. Absolutely no difference. So now they were puzzled. Yeah. So they did qualitative interviews with the people. Yeah. And they found that, they had a lot of negative thoughts, but they didn't care. they had literally, now this is what they had decentered from the content of their thinking. They didn't see it as reality. They more of the time, they didn't see it as part of their identity because they had a bad thought, a hurtful thought to other people didn't mean that they were a bad person. Okay. So then they set out, this was the foundation of mindfulness meditation. Yeah. They said, how do we decenter people? Now we would say, there's an understanding that you automatically, once you have a realization, but they went to do it, not by medicine, but by techniques. So they went to Barbara Linehan, who did dialectical behavior therapy. And interestingly, her spiritual advisor is a Trappist monk. He talks about the wise mind. Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting.
And so they talked with her and with him, and they came up with this mindfulness meditation where you would sit and you would watch your thoughts go by, but you you became less and less attached to the content, and you just noticed that if you didn't engage them by trying to get rid of them or feeding on them, reframing them or doing anything, that they would, like the river, they would go downstream. And that's how mindfulness meditation got started. From this study that showed these two, because both of those people were getting cognitive behavior therapy, but they all had divine mind at their essence, looking for a crack, so that many of the people saw beyond what they were being taught. Isn't that fascinating?
That's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, you remind me, Bill, I was just reading last week two separate sort of articles in two separate papers, in two separate newspapers, both people talking about their recovery from alcoholism. And each one said the same thing, exactly the same thing. Each one said that how did they recover? Well, they went on the 12-step program for years and years and years and years and years. And then they did this, and they had this therapy, and they had that therapy, and the other therapy. And both of them said that kind of just wasn't getting anywhere. And then each one, just in their own way, woke up one morning and just had this realization that they don't want to be an alcoholic anymore. They were done. You know, they just decided. You know, and that's what we call, in my mind, that's what we call kind of insight. They just saw something new. It was just an awakening, and all of that. Who knows if that led to it or if that didn't lead to it. But it's the awakening that makes the difference. It's the realization, it's the insight that changes us, not the process. You know, not what we go through. And I think it was the same thing. It's like maybe they went through CBT and whatever kind of happened to them or didn't happen to them, but they had an insight about the nature of their thinking. The people that got better, the people that did better had an insight, and they realized, hey, I don't need to take that thinking seriously, or I don't need to kind of take that on board, or that's not who I am, or that's not what I am. And the other people hadn't realized that. And that's the difference.
No, it is. It's right.
Yeah.
And you point to a good thing, because there's a number of instances where people have had Bill W., the founder of AA, had a powerful spiritual experience where he just woke up and experienced his connection to the divine. And he was free from that, freed him from a lot of anxious thinking. And creating tension in his body that he used alcohol to relieve. So that insight, as you mentioned, that realization from within, that it was a very spiritual, it was a connection to the divine. But then he and the doctor created these steps to try to assist people to have that realization. But he had the realization just in a moment of quiet, where his mind was a little quieter, and divine mind was able to get through the crack.
There we go.
Right? Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
And that happened, I think, with Eckhart Tolle. I think it happened with Byron Katie. But then they come up with 1,000-word books and 4 steps to challenge but that isn't what happened for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
They had an insight.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say something you're going to find funny, Bill. We had a guy over for lunch last week on Shabbat, and he's very involved in the 12-step program. And he said, but what he wants to do is he wants to create a 12-step program without God. That's what he wants to do, without the spiritual elements of it.
That's a luck.
Exactly. It's in my mind, it's such a misunderstanding. It's like, that's what the bit that works. You want to take out the bit that works and see if you can help people without that bit.
Right.
It's well, exactly. Lots of luck.
Right.
Lots of luck.
Let's see how that.
Let's see how it goes. Exactly. We'll check back in a year or two to see what's happened.
Let's do some research on that.
Yeah, that's right. So I had a first question for you. You've kind of touched on it. You've kind of answered it, but I'll see if you want to say more about it. So my question was that the medical field seems to see psychiatric illness as manageable. They're looking to manage it, but they're not looking to cure it. And the sense I get is they don't really believe they can cure it. You know, the best we can do is help you cope. We can get you coping mechanisms. Why do you see that? I know you see that differently. And why is it? What is it that you see differently?
See, I see it, and I'll try to do this gently as well as I can. I see it bigger than just psychiatry, because psychiatry are human beings. They're products of the present level of understanding of life and what God is.
Yeah.
And I think that most psychiatry and psychology sees human beings as broken or lacking.
Yeah.
Now, I was raised Catholic who saw human beings as having original sin and being lacking and broken and having a tendency towards evil that had to be fought.
Yeah.
So that I see psychiatry really, and I'll just, I know a little bit about Judaism, and I know I've done courses on them, Islam, but I can speak to Christianity because that's what I was brought up. So I think a lot of what the psychiatrists and psychologists, the way they see human beings as tending towards mental illness is the same thing as tending towards evil, tending towards lostness in their experience and their behavior, the same as my indoctrination, I'll just use it as told what to believe about God and life, that it was about you're broken, and somebody had to come down and be terribly to even have God give you a break.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, it sounds rather crazy to me, and I apologize if I offend anybody. But so I think that I think that those are individuals who go into psychiatry and psychology, but they're the product of an idea that human beings are broken very easily broken and tend towards being lacking something. So I think the idea that Mr. Banks saw that human beings are manifestations of God in a form and are sharing in the allowed to share in the divine intelligence if they use their personal mind to gain information. It's a beautiful gift. If you and I go to a doctor, we want them to have studied medicine. If we're going to buy some property, we want that real estate lawyer to have studied real estate law.
Yeah. But
we want them also to be in a lighthearted, loving place where they're integrous, where they treat people fairly, et cetera, et cetera. And to know, to me, what's most profound about this new understanding is that it sees human beings as the default setting as love and understanding, that we can then take away. We can get caught up in the content of our thinking or thoughts that get triggered from our vault in our computer, and we can get lost in the content, and we lose a level of consciousness and start to feel envy, anger, despair, sadly, we've got people killing people and killing other people and then killing themselves because they're feeling so. But this understanding says we can get lost, but once we have some insights, we can catch that earlier and earlier, get present in our life, and that the default setting, that mental well-being is like a huge cork, that once we stop pushing it down, as you've heard me say, the cork does not need a GPS to know how to get to the surface. It's natural. It goes back, and that's what's revolutionary, is that mental well-being is not something you have to dig through a bunch of rubble and painful things from the past to try to shine it up as much as possible. No, that it's the essence of what human beings are, that can only be shrouded over by a lot of thinking. But once that's let go of and the person gets back into the present moment, that mental well-being comes back to the space.
That's such a different paradigm. It's worlds apart.
It's revolutionary.
It really is.
It's not. It's evolutionary, but it's revolutionary.
It really is.
And that's why there's some backlash against it.
Yeah, I understand.
Because it's revolutionary.
Yeah.
It's shattering.
Yeah.
It's like Copernicus and Galileo.
Yeah.
When they saw that it was the sun, not the earth. It's like, they're in UK here in 1628, Dr. Harvey described how the circulation of the heart worked. 70 years earlier, a doctor in Spain did. He got burned at the stake. He got burned at the stake for describing how the body was oxygenated and how the heart worked, so anytime Einstein's relativity took 50 years for people to really start to accept it.
We have a different burning at the stake nowadays, and it's called cancelling. But in a certain way,
cancelling meaning just ignoring, or
no, cancelling, cancel culture we have nowadays. Cancelling means it happened a little bit to kind of what the background with J.K. Rowling. That she basically you get basically just blocked out. You become a non-person. In society. Society just rejects you. And you're finished. That's it. Nobody wants to speak to you anymore. Nobody engages with you anymore. That kind of happens nowadays.
They're shunning, I guess.
Yeah, shunning.
In West Point, they have this thing where they shun.
That's cancelling is shunning.
Yeah,
absolutely. But it's more in a way, it's more powerful nowadays because of social media. You can kind of get shunned worldwide. It used to be you could only get shunned by the people in your immediate vicinity. Now we have a worldwide shunning.
Tell me how you see that in relation to what we're talking about.
I was saying that you said that people used to get burnt at the stake for their opinions. I'm saying, well, now you just get cancelled for your opinions. She had a certain J.K. Rowling came up with a certain opinion on trans, on transgender. And I think all she said was that that women are people with uteruses. That's her definition of a woman. And that was it. We're going I don't want to go in a different direction. But it's not hard, and this is definitely revolutionary. And so, but what's amazing about this is it's so hopeful. It's just so unbelievably hopeful.
It is.
What do you want? You sit in front of a psychiatrist. You want to go to a psychiatrist who thinks you're broken and hopeless and incurable, and he'll help you cope a little bit if you're lucky. Or you want to sit in front of a psychiatrist who thinks you're perfect and you're well and you're healthy and you've got well-being, and there's just a cork down there and it'll jump up on its own even without his help. I know who I'd rather see. Now, people might think it's delusional, and that might be what kind of people might say about you, and kind of, I very much see the world the way you do as well. but let me just say a moment about Sidney Banks, because you kind of brought him up before. Sidney Banks was he passed away about 10, 12 years ago. He was a Scottish welder who left school when he was 15, 16 years old, and lived sort of a regular life without any great insight or ideas or direction in his life, until 1973, when out of the blue, really out of nowhere, out of nothing, as unexpected as you could possibly imagine, he had an insight. He woke up to something. He saw something incredibly deep and incredibly powerful about the human soul, about the human spirit, about his own soul, about God. And it changed him deeply and significantly and permanently. I think my sense is that at first he wasn't excited about sharing it with anybody else. He felt it was, wow, I've seen something here and that's great. And people were interested. And he was like, this is what I see. You go and see what you see. Don't ask what I've seen. Go and see what you've seen. But I think people kind of saw such changes in him. And I think he felt the changes in himself, that he felt it was something he had to try and share. He felt it was something he had to try and really, credit to him. He lived a life of giving, and he lived a life of contribution from there on in until his dying moments, for sort of 25 years after that. Or no, longer than that. It would have been till 2009, I think he passed away.
Right.
So for
36 years.
36 years. He lived 36 years of just contribution to the lives of others. And he changed so many lives. I mean, he changed, I would say, tens of thousands of lives.
Well, it just keeps going.
It keeps, exactly.
It's like
it's still continuing its waves. The waves are still rippling out. The waves that he kind of began are still rippling out. And certainly he changed Bill's life, massively, and less so my life directly, because I didn't know him that well. I went to one seminar that he did, and I met him a couple of times, but I sort of caught the tail end of it.
Right.
But I've been very impacted and very touched by sort of his students, by the people who learned from him, by somebody like Bill, who I'm a little bit jealous, had the opportunity to really learn from him directly. But he is what you would call, what they describe him, and I think it's a fair definition, as a theosopher, as somebody who, it's sort of, I put it this way, it's kind of God without religion. And I think that's sort of, to some extent, how Bill would see himself. Also the spiritual, touching something deeper, touching something spiritual, touching something greater and beyond, without the need for structure around that, without the need for anything formalized around that. With the trust in self, the trust that greater mind, that greater goodness, that greater spirit is within me and will guide me, without a need for sort of structural guidelines, that I can find my way, that I'm guided by something beyond me, I'm guided by something greater.
By divine intelligence.
By divine intelligence, exactly. That we all have access to divine intelligence, and we're all guided by that.
Right.
And Bill and I have had numerous conversations about this, because Bill's not the biggest fan of organized religion. And I respect that, Bill. I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't mean that as a criticism. Absolutely. In a certain sense, because I do see the world that you see it, the way you see it, I'm the one that has to defend my position more than you have to defend yours.
Yeah, it's tough, because on one hand, religions have done incredible good. The poor,
absolutely,
brought people together. But sadly, the dogma and the rituals, they separate. The only problem, they separate people into us's and thems.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've talked about this. I was taught, and I've talked to people from every major religion who were taught when they were little that those other people don't have what you have.
Yeah, that's taught when they were little. They're taught it when they're big as well.
And that our God favors us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every major religion.
Yeah.
Believe, and then so that's I thought of this metaphor the other day. I never thought, but you know how of course the parable of Joseph. The Joseph and the old. right. I mean, wasn't
Go on, which one?
the one that from the youngest. Am I in that?
Yeah.
Is
He's
that
the youngest
was it
child and
Joseph?
his
Was it
brothers.
Joseph?
Yeah,
Yeah.
his 10 older brothers.
Well, when
yeah.
he started telling
Yeah,
his
that's right.
older brothers that
Yeah.
he was special,
Yeah, that's right.
they didn't
take to it so well.
too well. So when people are insecure
Yeah.
and you tell them that you're special, that
Yeah.
it's happened over and over to different people of different religions, sadly, much more to
Absolutely.
the Jewish people, it seems like.
Yeah.
But people that are insecure don't take that very
Yeah.
well.
And you can end up being burnt the stake if you're not careful.
And worse.
Yeah,
and worse
absolutely.
goes on.
Absolutely.
So my heart goes out. I just got a call from my dear friend tonight as I was getting ready to come over here, and I'm going to tell you the content later.
Yeah.
His name is Virgil Wood. He's 91 years old. Dr. Virgil Wood was with Dr. Martin Luther King for last 10 years of Dr. Martin Luther King's life.
Wow.
And he's heading up. He wants to meet. He said, any day or night, I will have a Zoom with you and Rabbi Rosenblatt.
Oh, cool. Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
He's bringing together people from all religions.
Wow.
To find the essence that we all, and I mean, he's got a big, he has the president of Harvard behind him. He's got a lot of people. And he said, Bill, if I hadn't have met you a night in 2000, when you did the keynote speech at the Three Principles Conference in Pittsburgh, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now in the prisons and the work that he's going to talk to me about.
Oh, cool.
So, and you about.
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Because
let's do it.
Yeah, but isn't that exciting?
That's very exciting.
And he when he shook my hand and I came off the stage, he looked me in the eye. I'd never met him. I saw him sitting in the front row. And he said, this is the missing piece that Martin was looking for.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna tell you something that I'm ashamed to tell you a little bit, but I'll tell you nevertheless. I know I'm telling it in public over here, but is that
don't tell anybody.
Yeah, exactly. This is between us.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So anyway, we had, I had my rabbinic training program,
right.
And so we invite people from different religions to come and speak,
right? And
so we invited a Hindu speaker to come and speak, a Hindu priest. I don't know exactly what you would call him. Now I was kind of, and I kind of came to the session, and I had in my mind, I kind of knew what was going to happen before we started. I knew that this guy is an idol worshiper, and it's a pagan religion, and we Jews don't believe in it, and it's a load of nonsense. And I'm just going to we're doing it just to because I should do it with my rabbis,
right?
And we're going through the motions,
right?
and afterwards we'll have a conversation about it. We'll all say, "Oh, that guy was talking a load of nonsense."
Yeah.
That's kind of what I had in the back of my mind. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong.
Let's see, the Latin root of prejudice.
Yeah, there we go.
Is where we judge things
before they happen. Well, there you go. There you go. So I was a poster boy for prejudice over there. But at least I'm honest about it.
No.
Give me some credit for that.
Yeah, because we all do it.
Yeah, don't we just?
Yeah.
Well, this guy came in, and firstly, just the minute he walked in the room, he had a presence.
Wow.
And I just felt touched by him straight away.
Just who he was.
Yeah, just who he was.
Yeah.
And once he opened his mouth, he just had such a feeling of love and such a feeling of connection. And we had such a great time with him.
Wow.
And he was so insightful and loved what he shared. Wow. And it was just absolutely amazing.
Right.
Really amazing.
Right.
And then when we had our graduation, we invited him.
Wow.
And we invited the people from all the religions.
Wow.
Spoke to us. He was the one that came.
Wow.
And he absolutely loved it.
Wow.
And I spoke to him afterwards, and we got on so well. And actually, I was certain it's idol worship. They have an elephant in their temple and they bow down to it. That's not what idol worship, then what is?
Right.
But when he explained it to me, it made so much more sense.
Wow.
he said it's a question of gratitude, and it's not the elephant's not a god.
Right.
The elephant represents the goodness that we have in the world, and we want to be grateful for the different goodness that we have in the world. And this kind of symbolizes and helps us kind of recognize it. And I was like, well, that's
wow.
That's not very far from kind of how I see the world.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
so you know, it's amazing when we kind of get past ourselves and see
and really listen to each other.
Really listen.
You know, the metaphor that came to me, and it's not like most all metaphors, it's not a perfect metaphor, but that old story of the 5 blind men that find the elephant.
Yeah, there we go.
And they think that what they find is the elephant.
Is the absolute.
Is all, you know?
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's fascinating.
It is.
Well, I've got a few more questions for you here, Bill. I could talk to you all
night. And by the way, I'm a retired psychologist.
Yes, that's right. I did want to say that as well.
I'm if you will, I didn't like for a long time. I didn't like the word. I like the word educator.
Yeah.
Because educere means you draw out. You can't draw out what isn't already there. So I like that.
I love that.
And I've kind of had a resistance against the word coach.
Yeah.
Because I think of
But, come on, you can do it.
But really, when you watch the definition of in the dictionary, is a coach who sees the full abilities of a person and then assists them to manifest into form all their abilities.
Oh, well, that's perfect. Well, that's exactly
what I'm a well-being coach. I'm a well-being coach.
There we go.
And a 3 principles well-being coach and mental health educator, true mental health.
No, that's
drawing out. That's what I see myself.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, let me see if I can just get a bit more out of you. We've you know, I know you're kind of trying to retire from all this stuff and doing your best, you know, so as you can get to writing.
Yeah.
Which I think is so important for you to do. But maybe we have a little follow up over Zoom if you don't mind, because I've got a few things here that I want to add on. Can you give us some examples? Because I love some of your stories.
Sure.
Of individuals who you've seen who would be classified as sort of incurable, just lost in mental illness and just hopeless cases that you've seen cured and changed. Yeah,
you see, in a way, even our language, and I know what you know. I mean, but even to say that somebody is cured, I know in this world we would see somebody, but really, it's just that their mental well-being was reawakened, and that's different.
That is different, Bill.
That's different.
Yeah, that's very different. It's very different.
It's very different, and our language is such that it makes it sometimes even difficult to talk about. But what I've seen in the last, and for anybody's interested, I have my YouTube channel, William F. Pettit Jr. MD.
Yeah.
It's a YouTube channel. And
we'll put it up when we
and Elizabeth Lovius here in the United Kingdom, she had me address me in 2015. And I did probably 13 hours of podcasts.
Wow.
1 hour, and I've got transcripts of those that I'm excited to use as I start writing. But the first one is One Cause and One Cure, which I'll be glad to speak to. And then Stories of Hope, Anxiety Disorders, Stories of Hope, Depressive Disorders, Stories of Hope, Psychosis and Schizophrenia, Stories of Hope, Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, Stories of Hope, Addictive Disorders, Stories of Hope, Eating Disorders, Stories of Hope, ADHD, and story.
You've seen the whole gamut through your career.
I've seen it, and it needs to be put. I said this at the conference, and it's not about Bill Pettit. It's what I was allowed to see. I don't think there's ever been a psychiatrist that ever walked this earth that has been allowed to see happen in front of him what I've seen in the last 39 and a half years. And it needs to be in writing. One thing to have it on a video. It's another thing to have it in something in a library that's going to be there. And that it's documented and you know. Yeah, but anyway.
Well, maybe just the one story that I've heard you tell a couple of times is the guy in the States mental institution the schizo guy diagnosed with schizophrenia. Do you want to just kind of?
I can do that. And how much time do we have?
I don't know, maybe another 10 minutes or so.
Okay. Well, let me do 2 of them then.
Okay, great. Perfect.
So this was 6 months after I met Mr. Sidney Banks in April Fool's Day in 1983, and I think my own story when I sat there in the audience with this man who, and I guess 9th grade education when he went to school in the UK or in Scotland was for people that weren't going on to college.
Yeah, that's right.
Many of them did 9 grades.
Yeah, it's not a dropout.
Right. He went when you 9 grades, and he became a welder. And by the way, he was married and had 2 children and had worked 14 years as a welder in a pulp factory so he was a stable man. And all he wanted to do when he had this experience, which I won't take the time, it's on WWF where he describes his experience in his own words. Yeah. But he wanted to stop bickering with his wife. Yeah. That's all. And I was in South Africa with about 15 rabbis and their wives at a mutual friend of ours' house in Cape Town, South Africa, and they wanted to hear about Mr. Banks. And I said all he wanted to do was to stop bickering with his wife. And I said, now, among the Gentiles, there's a lot of bickering among couples. Does that ever happen among the Jewish couple? Well, they reassured me that happened. Yeah. Anyway,
now and then,
right? Maybe not as much as the Gentiles,
exactly.
But now and then,
absolutely not.
Anyway, I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
Absolutely.
But I sat there, April Fool's Day, 1983, as a psychiatrist with 26 and a half years of formal education. I was a physician for 5 years before I went into psychiatry. A psychiatrist is a physician first. Okay, he's a physician who then specializes in psychiatry. And I was a family physician with a squadron of Navy pilots for 3 years, right? And in surgery 2 years before that. But anyway, here I am with 26 and a half years of formal education. I had been going in and out of clinical depression off and on for 20 years. Wow. 20 years. I'd seen 6 different psychiatrists.
Oh my!
They were beautiful people. And they had, with their love and their caring, medicines never really helped me. But with their love and their caring, they had helped me through my depressions to where even though I was almost immobilized in times in college, times in medical school, times in residency, that they helped me through to where I never had to stop my journey. I was on, if you will, think of being an 8-cylinder car. I was on 2 cylinders sometimes, but I was able to keep going because of their love and care. But as I sat and listened to Mr. Banks on a Friday evening in a 2-day program, within 30 minutes, I knew that this man had been allowed to see 1,000 times beyond anything I'd ever been taught or know about mental well-being. And I literally, within 30 minutes, felt 250 pounds of weight drop from my chest. And I saw that I had been creating my depression with my own thinking, 6 to 9 hours a day of metaphorically doing this. But I didn't initially see how to stop doing it. But I had hope. Because I thought my depression was from my genes, was from some adverse experiences I had as a child. I thought it was from the fact that I had depression on both sides of my family. I didn't know that it was from what I was doing, my lacking understanding with this gift of thought, 6 to 9 hours a day, creating incredible physiological dysfunction in my body, which I was getting, which really was feedback trying to wake me up. With my mood going down and my anxiety level going up, was a love letter from God saying, you got to look in a different direction. But I didn't know where to look. Okay? So I say that because I knew now, I had hope because I knew I was doing it. And if I'm doing it, there might be some hope that I can learn how not to do it. But when it's from things that I have no control over,
then
I'm screwed.
You're a victim of.
I'm a victim. I'm going to go in and out of this.
Yeah.
and try to survive my life.
Yeah.
Okay. So 6 months later in 1983, and I won't go into all the circumstances because of our time, but in my hometown, I settled down for a year, my wife and 2 children, and I get a job at the state mental hospital. 700 beds, 900 employees. I befriend a psychologist who has an incredible anxiety disorder, that he has panic attacks, even though he's a psychologist, that disappear after we have lunches for about 4 weeks, 3 times a week. But he thinks
what I mean by miracles.
He thinks it went into the air. He doesn't know why. He still thinks I'm full of crap. At least I won't use the S. I'm full of crap. And so he asked me to co-lead this group of chronic people with the diagnosis of chronic schizophrenia that had been there many years. On the halfway through the 3rd session, there was a man that had been sitting with his chair askew for the first 2.5 sessions, talking to his auditory hallucinations. Not disruptive, so we didn't say anything. He started laughing, like not just giggling, laughing that most people, I bet, had some time in their life where somebody got laughing so hard that they're holding their stomachs, their eyes are watering, and then you can't not do it. You don't know why. It's contagious. It's more contagious than COVID-19. It happens immediately.
That's right.
And all 21 of these seriously mentally ill people, and me and the supposedly labeled that. We're holding our stomachs, begging him to stop. Stop it! Stop it! It goes on for 7 to 10 minutes.
Wow.
There's aftershocks. He gets, and then he has another insight. And here's what he told me. I mean, I know you've heard this many times. He sat across from me. First of all, I waited till he wiped his eyes and his breathing was normal. And I said, Herb, I said to the psychologist, because I didn't know these 21 men. I said, who is he? He says, his name's Herb. He's been in the state hospital since he was 20. He's 67 years old. I said, are you saying he's been here 47 years?
Wow.
He said, they've tried a couple of times, but he quickly. I said, Herb, could you tell us what was so funny? Herb picked up his chair, put it into the group. And Shaul, he looked at me as directly as you're looking at me right now. And he said, Doctor, while you were talking, I suddenly I don't think he used the word suddenly. He said, I realized that I've been making myself crazy for 47 years with my own thinking.
Wow.
And then Sid used to say, people will sometimes jump your understanding. Like we talked about with the cognitive, they jumped the understanding of those. He said, which I hadn't learned yet, I was incremental. He said, and I don't have to do it anymore.
Just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Now, I know people would call that a spontaneous cure, but what I see it was just a reawakening. He let go of the baggage that was holding the cork down, and the cork went just. and I will tell you, it was unsettling to me. It sounds strange, but it was unsettling. It was. Oh wait, I didn't sign up for this. I don't mind helping people, relieving their suffering, but 47 years. And I will, again, because of time, I had 3-year follow-up. I got him out of the hospital. It took a while to convince the head people
that he was. But
I said, well, what? At one point, I said, we need 4 more. I got him off all his medicines. Didn't need them anymore. In fact, they were causing problems. They were causing problems because they weren't needed. I mean, you keep taking medicines when they're not needed, they're going to cause problems.
Of course.
Okay. So he gets out. I have a 3-year follow-up because this psychologist couldn't believe what he followed him for 3 years. It was fine. He had a girlfriend. He went down. He had an apartment. He was on no medicines. They went dancing. He had a whole bunch of friends. They'd go to movies. He was fine. Okay.
People listen to this. I'm telling you, I don't know if you guys listening out there. People think like, ooh, is this guy here something wrong with
No,
Bill?
I know. I had a man in London at
Yeah.
one of our conferences a few years ago. He raised his hand and he said, "That's impossible."
Yeah, yeah.
He said, "That's impossible." And I said, "Well, I guess you're calling me a liar."
Yeah, yeah.
And I tell you, I'm not saying that I never lied when I was younger and insecure,
Yeah,
but it's been a number of years now where I go to bed every night with what I say and do during the day.
yeah.
And I'm not willing to go to bed out of integrity with myself. This happened.
Mm.
I wish I had a videotape. I
Mm.
don't. Okay.
Mm.
So can I do a second one?
Yeah, sure. But I just want to squeeze one in
Oh,
on
yeah,
my own
yeah,
while we're at it. You
yeah.
just reminded me. We had a guy a few years ago at the conference
Mm.
who he had terrible OCD, suffering for years and years and years and years and years, and really struggled to come out of his house even at times because of his OCD. And he happened to be in the UK, and a friend of his, and his flight got cancelled.
Okay.
He was going back to Europe. His flight got cancelled, so he couldn't go back to Europe, and so he had an extra day. So his friend said to him, "Why don't you come to the conference?" So he comes to the conference, very skeptical, very cynical, very
Of course, hopeless. What he is,
Yeah.
what he is hopeless.
Yeah, that's right.
what
Yeah,
resistance is.
well, exactly.
Resistance is lack of hope.
Yeah, that's right.
It's lack of
Absolutely.
hope. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, if I hadn't seen this, I wouldn't believe it.
I know. I know.
Some of these things that happen.
I
So he
know.
comes to our conference for one day.
I know.
At the end of the conference, I saw him just pass by him. I said to him, "Sir, how do you enjoy the conference?" He said, "I'm cured." I said, "What do you mean you're cured?" He said, "I'm cured of my OCD." I said, "Oh, slow down. That's a bit of a jump, you know." No. He says, "I'm going to show you." I said, "Well, how are you going to show me?" He goes up to he said, "I wouldn't normally do this. Don't get me wrong, man. I'm going to do this to show you. Just want to show it to you. Don't think I'm crazy."
Sure.
He goes up to the bin, the rubbish bin.
Right.
He takes some food out of it and he eats the food out of the bin. He says, "Look," he says, I couldn't have even gone within 5 meters of that bin.
Of germ phobia.
That's right.
Right.
This morning,
Right.
when I walked in here,
Right.
he says, "I'm taking something out. I can eat it from the bin." He says, "I'm cured." And I've seen this guy. This was 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
I've seen this guy at various times along the way. He's doing great. He's doing fine.
Yeah. See, because the OCD is not a reality.
Yeah.
It's the way that he was dealing with his anxiety.
Yeah.
He was creating anxiety.
Yeah.
And then the rituals help relieve the anxiety somewhat.
Yeah.
There are young people, sadly, that take razor blades to their inner thighs.
Oh yeah.
Because that physical pain releases 100-fold much emotional tension and distress. So again, the OCD is just a label of severe mental stress that he's trying to deal with by doing rituals and by limiting things. Yeah. Compartmentalizing his anxiety.
And the minute you kind of relieve that, boom, again. Yeah. So I've seen it for myself as well, but it's hard to believe, but you've seen it over and over and over again.
Because it is, because it's like you said, it's revolutionary. Yeah. It's a totally new paradigm. That your default setting is mental well-being that can be pushed down with your innocent 100 times misuse of thought. Yeah. But as soon as you have a realization, and for most people, myself included, it was incremental. Yeah. But I think sometimes these immediate ones show the possibility. Exactly. They show that people like Viktor Frankl, Mandela, Gandhi, they show that they were not exceptions to the rule. Yeah. They're the rule in action. Yeah, that's right. They're the rule in action. Yeah. And that's different. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's been in front of us, but we've always said, "Oh, that's an exception." Yeah. That's an exception. Exactly. I usually add Pooh Bear in there. Yeah. He keeps his equanimity. Yeah. That's good. So okay, one more story, and then with that. Okay, so I'm at West Virginia University, university setting. I'm in the medical school primarily at the Sidney Banks Institute with Judith Sedgman, but I have a friend, a really nice man, and he's going on vacation for 2 weeks. He says, Can you cover the mental health my mental health unit that I'm the head of director of, the inpatient unit.
Yeah.
I said, sure, I'll do that for the 2 weeks he's gone. So I think it was the first day I was there. This young woman is 26. This is her 5th admission in 7 months.
Wow. Gosh.
Revolving
Shame.
door. She's 26. She has a college degree. She was married. She had a 6-year-old boy. And she's in a full-blown manic episode, which, by the way, we think is terrible mental illness. 75 to 80% of people who come out of it told me that when they went into the mania, suicide had become a true option. So the mania saved them from killing themselves, and it got attention. When you're acting manic, when you're running around with no clothes on, or you're starting fires in the middle of a busy street, you get attention, and you get taken to a safe place,
and people take care of
That's
you.
divine mind. We're giving us a free will, but within the confines of what our understanding is, trying to get us a chance. That's revolutionary.
Yeah, that really is.
So she's there. She's been up for 44 hours.
Wow.
Some people will know what this means. She's on 2,100 milligrams of lithium.
Yeah.
She's on 800 milligrams of what we call Seroquel. Quetiapine is the drug, the chemical name. So they probably have a different in the UK. Quetiapine, 800 milligrams, the maximum dose. And she's still going 280 miles an hour. She's talking so rapidly. And she's been awake now for 43 and a half hours.
My gosh.
And I sit for a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, because I thought maybe if I get really present and quiet and just let her know that I know she's okay, that just my presence, something might happen. She might slow down. And I might understand what she's trying to communicate, because she's trying to communicate something, but it's gibber. It sounds like gibberish.
Yeah.
So I finally, after 3 minutes, I realized I can't do that. So I say, Molly, we're calling. Molly, raise your hand when you can stop talking for 60 seconds. Hand goes up. I said, Molly, you are perfectly mentally healthy. You just don't know it. You've gotten caught up on some negative thinking. It has affected your physiology. It's even affected your epigenetics. It's turned off so you can't even communicate what you want to communicate. You, however, at your essence, you are perfectly mentally healthy. Okay? 6 months later, I'll fast forward, the healing started that moment. 6 months later, she's in nursing school, fast forwarding through an 18-month nursing program at the university. She became a neurology nurse. She used to have panic attacks too. She's on no quetiapine, 800 milligrams gone. She's on 300 milligrams of lithium instead of 2,100. She went to her doctor, her psychiatrist, and told her that she wanted to go to nursing school. And the psychiatrist said, you can't, you've got a serious mental illness. You need to go on disability. You're mentally ill. You're seriously mentally ill. She said, fine, bye. And she contacted me and became my patient. Okay. So she's sitting there, and she's sitting next to me, and we tell her story. She's sleeping 8 hours a night. She's working on the weekends as a certified nurse assistant to keep insurance for her 6-year-old little boy. And going during the week, going to nursing school. And she's sleeping 7.5, 8 hours a night. So we finished with the presentation, and one of the residents asked a great question, said, Molly, what did you think when Dr. Pettit told you in the 43 hours awake in a full-blown manic psychosis with your brain going 300 miles an hour, and he told you you were perfectly mentally healthy? What did you think? Yeah. And she got a little smile on her face. She said, well, she said, the first thought that I had was, oh my God, they have given me a psychiatrist who's crazier than I am. It's exactly. And I thought that's brilliant. Yeah. Because in the midst of her psychosis, that she could say what he said is revolutionary. Or it's revolutionary or crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. But you know what she said then? She got real quiet and she said, but right after that thought that they've given me a psychiatrist, even crazier than I am, came another thought from a different place. And I knew that what he had just said was absolutely true.
Wow.
See, and you and I would call that God, or universal mind.
Yeah.
That wasn't from her intellect. It wasn't from her stored brain that said this is man's crazy.
Yeah.
From her soul.
Yeah.
God said what he just said is perfectly true. And she said, I knew it. And that's when the healing started.
Amazing. Amazing. Bill, it's just, you know, I know you've got hundreds of stories like that. You know, you really
we could be here a couple of days.
I know. But
that's why it has to be written down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But what a privilege for you, you know, to be able to have a life like that. You know, I'm jealous in a way, to just sit with human beings and to just awaken the soul within and see that come out and see them heal and see them find themselves. I mean,
but here's what I know that you do the same. And I've heard too many stories.
I try my best.
I've heard too many stories, Saul. You're not going to blame me for this. Because and here I want to share as we stop. I won't read it.
Yeah.
Because I don't have my glasses.
Yeah.
But in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
In Zimbabwe, they've started a thing. They've got 12 psychiatrists for 14 million people.
Yeah.
So you know what they did? They started outside the clinic. They had a friendship, and they have grandmothers.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And grandmothers, and there's now over 70,000 people have been reached by these grandmothers, and they did a study, and that showed that on a score of 14, the grandmothers lowered the people's anxiety and depression to 3.8, where normal therapy was still at 9.8. So this is not, you don't have to be a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
You have to be a human being that sees the health. And grandmothers see love unconditionally.
Yeah.
You've heard me say, whole 195 countries, there's a organization based on unconditional love.
Yeah.
All 109, it's called grandparenting. But it's true.
It's very true.
Because parents want to love unconditionally, but they get caught up in their worries about what will people think, what will the neighbors think.
Yeah, very good.
Right?
Very good, Bill.
Anyway.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much. It's just been such a pleasure. I just love hanging out with you, Bill. This is a good excuse to do so. We really want to do a podcast.
We can do it again. But I wanted to make the point that it's not, you don't have to be a psychiatrist.
Yeah, I love that point as well.
You can be just a human being who sees God in the other person and speaks to that.
Yeah.
That's well-being.
But that's what I meant. That brings us full circle now. I said, your credentials are you. Your credentials are who you are. You know, is just your humanness is what heals, is what's healed people. And that's you know, all that you learned in medical school, that's not what's healed them. Might have been helpful in other ways, but what's really healed them is you.
Well, the humanness, I'm fine with that, as long as we acknowledge that that's the same humanness that every human being walking the earth has.
Well, if we don't have humanness, then what have we got?
that we're all drinking from the same well.
Absolutely.
And that's what I want to say, that we're all connected to the same well. That I was lucky enough to get out of the way from incrementally to let the well fill me up. And that can happen at any time. I know you see it all the time.
Yeah. That can happen anytime, anybody, any place. And like you say, Bill, and I guess let's leave that as a final message, that there's so much we can all do. You know, there's suffering out there. We live in a world of suffering and increasing mental illness. And we have what to offer people. Don't think you need a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist. Share your humanness with them. Share your own wisdom. Share your spiritual essence with somebody, and miracles can happen.
And be selfish about getting your own peace of mind, because we can only give what we have
ourselves.
And my thing, that my latest insight was to stay physically rested.
Yeah.
When I am physically rested, my personal mind gets quiet without effort.
Yeah.
And I access that wisdom that's at the core of our essence in a way that's easy and natural. And I tried to access it for years while I was tired and exhausted. And it's hard. So I just encourage people to not think of being rested as being selfish, but being as incredibly selfless and loving, because then you can give and you have an abundance to give.
And that message was for me as much as it was for you.
and me too. And me too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you, Bill. That was really beautiful and really touching, and I thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay.